Hello, everyone, and welcome to our final session of Fire 2022. It is an exciting time. This is where we hear from all of you about what you liked about Fire, what you want to see more of next year. But before we dive into that, I'm going to introduce Sally Anderson, who is the editor-in-chief of Fire and Strategic News Service, and a co-lead on the Fire Films initiative, with which many of you are familiar with.
Hi everyone. It's great to see so many familiar faces this week. It's been a wonderful week. I wanted to mention, for those of you who have not been to Fire before, in Fire 2008, for the first time ever, we selected a film to screen for everyone. It was a documentary film. It was called The Cove. You may have heard of that, by Luis Hoyos. It was the first public screening of The Cove after it won its award at Sundance, and it went on to win the Academy Award shortly after that. And it was so well received by our people at Fire that we decided we should do this every year. So firefilms.org has since become a membership-based organization. We send out 10 films or more per year, usually. Most of them have not yet been seen by the public. We have director's comments about the film. Meanwhile, we began showing every year a film that was based on usually technology informing and improving the world, conditions in the world. We began to broaden that to also address other critical issues. And we invite people to get involved with a lot of the issues that are raised in Fire films. So it's become a really amazing community and a real favorite at Fire. And so we're sorry that because we're virtual this year, we are not going to make you sit and watch a film for 90 minutes while your friends are sitting in boxes next to you. But what we are doing is sending a link to everyone to our next really amazing film called Tigre Gente. Beautiful cinematography. It's shot largely in Bolivia at Madidi National Park. And it covers the illegal jaguar trade, mostly going from Madidi and Bolivia in general to China. I want to say thank you to CEO Sharon Anderson Morris first for starting this program, and to Elizabeth Unger, who is the director of this film. It's just not, I think it's just not quite hitting the circuits yet. It's been to several film festivals and it keeps winning awards. So we've got another great choice on an important topic, and it actually covers a lot of the things that we're talking about at Fire. Global politics, the role of China, conservation, the future of life on Earth. And it's hot off the press. So we hope you enjoy it. We'll send you a link this coming week with the director's comments and some other goodies. And if you're interested in learning more about Fire Films or joining, you can go to firefilms.org. You can also email me at sally@stratnews.com. Thank you.
Thanks, Sal. Yeah, I'm very excited to watch that film. It sounds amazing. All right, host 500, Mark Anderson.
Oh God. One more time into the breach. I'm going to do that just to say I did it.
So we're gonna wrap up. I'll tell you all what we're gonna do, and then we'll do it. Mark and I are gonna share a few of our favorite parts of the week so far, and then we're gonna invite you to share your comments with us. We are interested to hear anything you want to say. We are particularly interested in things that you loved about this week, and or things that you want us to do next year. So we'll let you go, but we'll do this in a rather organized fashion, which is if you want to speak, raise your virtual hand, which you'll find in the somewhere in Zoom, I think. I don't know if anyone else. Down below, Scott says with his fingers. If you're having trouble finding that, just message Scott, he can help you. So we'll just do it popcorn style. So we'll pick the first person, they'll pick the next person. So with someone with their hand up, and we'll just go around the room. But Mark, first we are going to talk about our perspective on the week that just happened.
Right, and I'm going to do this very quickly because I really want to hear from everybody who's here. That's the most fun of the entire FIRE project, I think. So this is not going to be a long, windy thing. So these are some highlights that I picked up and not intended to be a complete description. The first thing that happened, and this is typical FIRE stuff, I think. Barrett and I were in the green room Monday morning at 8:40 when we came to a new conclusion. And that was that we had been talking about the great schism geopolitically and economically happening between China and the West, and between CRINC, China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, and the rest of the world, and all that stuff. We've been talking about this for a long time. And suddenly, I think it's fair to say we both kind of came to the same conclusion at the same moment, that there was something else deeper going on, not across space, but across time. And that we were in a moment right now in this year where we're crossing a pivot timeline. And Barrett, we have to make up a name for this thing. It's important, but where things are different. They really are different. And we kind of entered our 9 a.m. survey of the world with this idea that suddenly in the year 2022, things are changing radically in everything, just all kinds of things at many different levels. And that there's a kind of a, I don't want to say red line, but there's a pivot line there in the sand, of time. And so I certainly feel now at the end of the week that we have unveiled many of those things. And I believe it was a true understanding, Barrett. So that was the very first thing before we even hit FIRE in the green room that I'd like to just, highlight. Another thing that happened, we talked to Larry Brilliant. I love that conversation. I love Larry. And I think that was great for everybody. He brought a level of calm play to the entire mix of questions, all the way from, yes, it probably was a lab release of COVID, to, the worst, my favorite thing he said, it's not a very nice thing, he said the real crime that China committed was allowing 5 million people to flow out of Wuhan to the rest of the world at a time when China knew that they were having a pandemic and that not anyone to travel during the Chinese New Year. And I had heard 20,000 or 40,000. I hadn't heard 5 million. That was probably for all of China. So I understand that as a crime because, goodness gracious, 10 million people died from that. So that was an interesting quote from Larry. And then, and I'm going to come to some quotes later. And then Carver Mead, that was a great interview. Not saying because of me, I think because of Carver. That interview went way beyond my expectations. And Larry Smarr, who we had up the next day, he said that was the most profound conversation he'd ever seen at FIRE. Wow. So, and what did Carver say? The main thing, if I'm taking this properly away, the main thing he said was, here we are at a pivot in time. In the sweep of all of his experience from designing the earliest chips till now, this is the moment when everything's changing. I thought, well, that kind of underlines what Barrett and I were saying at 9 o'clock this morning. So it fit. And I believe Carver's right. I think it's true. You can kind of feel it. There's a very deep change going on in technology, which was not always true every year. Larry made a comment that I thought was just delightful. I'm not quoting him, but I'm paraphrasing him. He said, in discussing Tesla and the AI and the organization behind the AI and the future of the use of that AI for all Tesla, 1 million or whatever Tesla owners. And he said something like, we're all working for Elon's AI. And I think that is basically true. And then he said, and we get to pay him $10,000 for the privilege. And I thought that was also true. So it's a pretty interesting view of Tesla ownership. And then, of course, my favorite thing, the reveal of explainable AI at FIRE. I love the whole AI day. I think that was really well done. I want to thank everyone who did that. And it was exciting. And then to be able to have Pattern come in at the end and display the new holy grail that everybody in AI is dreaming of, explainable AI. And I thought that the Pattern team did a great job doing that. I'm biased, but how exciting to have FIRE be the place where we got to do that reveal. So much, much more. I want to jump from the summarization of things to a few quotes that I happened to pick because their quotes are fun. And I wish I'd started doing this right at the beginning, but I didn't. But I have some from Craig Venter, who's eminently quotable. And so here they are. One is, scientists are not the most brilliant population on the planet. I love that quote. He said, we tend to think very narrowly. Thank you, Craig. He also said, with regard to junk DNA and microbiomes and scientific ideas about lots of different things, he said, we are expressing our ignorance in the most profound ways. That was beautiful. And then he said later, he said, the notion that the viruses actually improve the software, DNA, of the other host species is actually one of the most profound discoveries. And I didn't really think of it that way. I think he's right. So that was a big one. And then he said, life looks very different when you have a naive approach without assumptions. And he's making the argument, don't bring a hypothesis to the party, which of course, pattern computer believes in deeply. And then the last one was, and the whole idea that the DNA of species and life itself is in an equilibrium. This is not a quote, but he hit on it many times. And as you know, Barrett, we are deep believers in what we call equilibrium genetics, and that was a perfect fit for that idea, I thought. Now, Larry Smarr, I've already quoted about the most profound conversation in the history of fire. And then Heidi Larson, thanks to you, Barrett, she said, today, CEOs are far more trusted than the government. I thought that was a quote. I didn't know that. And she also quoted a woman from, I believe, Rome, with regard to the COVID experience, saying the war, meaning World War II, the war was better. That shocked me to hear that. I think she was saying that people are more separated right now in this fight than they were in World War II.
I think that it was harder to get through such an intense experience without the support of their family and community.
Yes, all that, exactly.
Because during the war, they were able to socialize and interact and kind of process things.
Yes. And then Evgeny Afnivsky, I hope I've said your name right, Evgeny, this morning said, do not think it cannot happen here. About Ukraine, meaning the US. That was a quote. And then my favorite quote, of course, from the entire week was David Brin's quote during our resonance conversation, where he suggested that I should get the Nobel Prize. So thank you, David, for that. Take the win and run away. So I think with that, I'll stop. And Barrett, is there anything you'd like to add, first of all?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think, what we are seeing this week, hearing from the experts on Ukraine this morning, and seeing what's happening in Europe and the way, and the German politicians yesterday about the future of Germany's role as it relates to Russia and sustainability and the Green Party specifically. I think that really ties back into what you were talking about, the big shift that we mentioned at the beginning, which is we are at a pivot point where previously many other countries did not really understand what was going on here. And I think the invasion of Ukraine has actually fundamentally shifted the entire political order in that way. People are going to start, where before people were kind of like on the edge about Russia, they were on the edge about China. I mean, China is still, they maybe haven't quite gone there on China, but they're not going back. No one's going to go back to a time where they said, oh, it's okay, we can't, it'll be fine, we'll just invest our money there anyways. Because I think there's this awareness of the Russia-China alliance has made a fundamental shift, and it is growing. And I don't think we're going to see that changing anytime soon. The other thing that I wanted to highlight was Amory Lovins had a fantastic conversation with Leidy Klotz today about removing things in design and how sustainability and the removal of elements is such an important idea to bring into your design of systems and technologies, products. And I think that's a real key to the future of how we think about building things. We have a human bias towards addition, and sometimes you have to destroy things before you can have the right system or the right, and that's I think going to be key in going forward as well. There was a really great, I think it was Rennie maybe, who said Zen versus bling, which I thought was a pretty interesting way to describe that. So
I really,
many more, but I think we should open it up to the rest of the group because we have.
I really appreciated
Thank you.
working with China with Rob and everybody else. That was really well done. And on the disengagement and partial disengagement and how to do it. That was very helpful. Okay, Barrett.
All right. So with that, I will start with, if you want to say anything. Oh, Evan has something to say.
I have a couple things that have come up in the chat that I just want to cover before people have to leave.
Okay.
One, Ursula is asking, people we met in the workshop rooms, how can we virtually stay in contact? So that's an announcement we missed. For those of you who do not know, we have a private social network for FIRE so that this never has to stop, and we keep doing this all year. That's one way, actually, Chris, that we're trying to make sure that these things go somewhere too. So all of that will continue on FIRE HQ. You will be sent a link if you don't have one or don't have a profile to sign into that. And it is like a potent mix of content from SNS and FIRE, interacting with all of us and other people in the membership base, and kind of like a LinkedIn feel. So, we tried to make like what would you create as a network for people that participate in FIRE? I know it's hard because we all have a lot of different accounts at a lot of different places, but I think this group is so much more interesting. Simon's holding up. It is available on iPhone and Android as well, so you can have it on your phone, which is great.
Just search for it it's in the App Store if you search for FIRE HQ.
But you will need to make your profile before you can sign into the app, because it really is private to all of us, to avoid all the problems that we see in other social media. And then there was one more question
About the sessions. I think so. The sessions, we recorded all of the sessions, and those will be available starting probably tomorrow, right, Scott? When they will be live in this website, you can come back and watch any of the sessions that you missed. Scott will let us know in the chat when that will be.
We'll put out an announcement. Some of them might need some editing, but they should all go live on their Agenda page, and we can talk in our post show today exactly how that release will happen. But we should have at least half the week up by Monday.
Okay.
And then I have one last thing before I leave it to the whole popcorn, which is that Kai, who's been coming to FIRE for a long time, made an interesting point in one of our discussions. And I know today was a bit of a heavy day panel-wise. Kai said, I always come to FIRE feeling like the world is a little bit doomed and leave feeling really excited about the future. Please don't change that pattern. And I would like to say two things to that, and then I'll shut up for once this week. One, I totally agree with you, Kai. I know we had some heavy stuff today, and it was the last day, and it wasn't necessarily on purpose, but I think this week has been really inspiring to me because throughout we've had a number of panels, and I tried to do that in my panel today, that focused on what can be done. And people are already talking about in the chat, that's what FIRE is focused on. So I think that for that reason, I really hope no one's going home feeling not hopeful, because this whole group is focused on fixing problems, doing things about the problems. And so if I were to get corny about it, I would say, even when times are darkest, that's when you need the fires the most.
Thanks, Ev.
Thanks, Ev.
Well said. All right, I'm going to go to Kai first because he looks like he's in his car, and we don't want him to get in a car accident.
I actually pulled over, so don't worry. Number one. Number two, Evan, you took what I just wanted to say. So I just go then straight to point two. This time I finally actually understood Mark's resonance theory. So that was good. That was a good one for me. Next one is, I have to say that I was so impressed with Evan and Barrett being there, because I haven't seen you in action that much. A little bit on some of the firesides, but this was, that was your conference. So I'm really excited about that one. And it was professionally done. So that's next one is the videos, because I think they have very educational value, not only for young people, but for older people. What is the policy once you put them online on sharing these?
That's a great question. I'm not sure if we have a good answer for you yet, but we will follow up and let you know, because you're not the first person that asked that.
Okay, and then the last one is, and that comes from several people I talked to, is like, nothing beats San Diego in person, please.
All right.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, Kai. All right, let's go to Simon and Mary next.
Okay, I'm just unmuting. Hope that worked.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, good. Okay,
Don't
so
say no.
I was just wanting to again, echo the thanks very much to Barrett and Evan. Your moderation skills were top notch. I guess 2 years of Firesides have really been a crash course, I guess, in developing the skills in online moderation. And thank you. And one thing, just one point occurred to me thinking about some of the things Mark was saying just now about this conflict. There's one of my favorite books the last few years have been the Scottish science fiction writer Ken MacLeod's Corporation Wars series of novels, which start with what he refers to as the conflict between reactionary and accelerationists. And that description is actually sort of fits quite well with what's happening here. We've got people trying to drag us into the future, and we've got people trying to drag us into the past. And the rest of us are just along for the ride.
And the people who are trying to drag us into the future aren't necessarily doing it well or thoughtfully.
They're not the good guys either.
Yeah. They're taking the Leninist approach of you smash it all and then you build something, and that doesn't help any more than smashing it all just so you can take people backwards. But does Ken have solutions in there?
Not really.
So it's an awful warning.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Simon and Mary.
But
All right.
to keep the hopeful note, a phrase we keep using, something that somebody else coined a while ago, particularly for writers like Stan, hope punk. It doesn't have to be depressing. It doesn't have to be pushing everything down. There is a lot of writing and a lot of work out there that is how to take ideas and play them forward and see how it can work out well. And let's remember that as well as remembering all of the appalling things that go on, because this has been such an important week to have fire, and it's been really helpful for me personally to be able to immerse myself in people thinking about and caring about and wanting to solve things. And that's for me always the fire note.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Very well said. I want to just note, thank you to everyone who's acknowledged Evan and I, but we are just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what it takes to put on this event every year. So Sally Anderson, our editor-in-chief, she writes a lot of our marketing materials, all the emails that you get. Chris Krug, who's been running our social media accounts. Lee Hall has been, and Scott Schramke have been behind the scenes making sure that everything is working seamlessly. On the technical side, they were responsible for getting the platform all set up so that we could have a conference. And Will Audley in San Diego, and Dave Cornell, who beamed in all the way from Rome to help get you all the speakers set up and ready to go before their sessions. Jeff Wallace, who was in Boise, who is our most recent addition to the team. He worked tirelessly up until the conference with Evan to get our partnerships all secured and locked down and make sure everything works smoothly on that front. So thank you to everyone who has put this show on. Everyone on our team deserves a lot of acknowledgement, and they don't always get to be front and center on camera. So we just get to be the fun part, the easy part, and they do all the hard work.
And thank you to our sponsors.
Yes, and thank you to our partners who we could not put this conference on without. So we really appreciate many of you who are entrepreneurs come back year after year after year and help support us and support this work. And we would not be able to do that without you. And we're lucky to be working with a lot of companies that are extremely good companies. Like we talk a lot about different kinds of corporate cultures. we try very hard, and we are very lucky to get to work with companies that are really building extremely innovative technologies that are changing the world for the better. So that is a delightful thing about our business model. I'm going to go to Mark Prensky next, and then we'll go to Kevin.
Hi, everybody. I've been coming to FIRE for a long time, and I have to say this was one of the best that I've ever been to. So thank you. A couple of things. First, I loved some of the people who came, like Angela Sheffield and Nicola Fox, who gave me real faith that our government has some wonderful people in it that we should know more about. So thank you for that. I think that the part that Mark brought up about change is also the change of generations. And that is really what Barrett and Evan represent in some sense, that we're passing the torch. I mean, there are a lot of people that have been here since the beginning, but now we're seeing new people, and I hope there'll be many more new and younger people, and thank you for bringing those in that you did. Personally, my favorite, the thing that I took away was a conversation I'm going to be having in a couple of hours with Andrew Himes, where he brought up collective action initiatives. And I hadn't really thought about that, but it's a great way for adults to get together with young people who are doing empowerment hubs, and that sparked a lot of interest in me. And the last thing I'll say is that I don't actually agree with Kai. I think this format was fabulous. I think that the virtual format allowed me to attend better, allowed us to have other people from around the world that we might not have had. Maybe the best thing is to have some kind of a hybrid, but if what we want to do is eat and drink together, I think that's great. I'm all for it, but we can do that in certain ways. But this, whether we do it in Zoom or in some other more friendly software, I thought this was phenomenal and that we could never have done this in the past. So thank you for that. I'm very happy.
Thank you, Mark. We really appreciate that. So Chris Apfel says he has to leave now, but this was the best conference that I've attended for years. Presentations and dialogues with top-notch experts in a FIRE chat setting. I feel so honored to have been able to be a part of this. Chris, is there anything you want to add before you have to hop out? I think you might have gone already. Oh, there he is.
This has been really fantastic. I don't want to take up any more time. I'm looking forward in future discussions with this additional platform that we have. So I think what is impressive is the level of expertise that is coming together, and it's really mind-opening. And I think what's really nice is that you have also invited experts from various different fields. So it's very refreshing to see something really new that is in the future and not on the common trodden path.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Kevin Turner has been waiting for a long time. So Kevin, let's go to you.
Thank you. Well, I have to say that Pattern Computer's explainable AI reveal was probably the most important and most exciting thing that I heard during the conference. Now, I'm a Pattern Computer investor, so consequently I have a substantial partisan skin in that game. And as such, I thought the whole reveal was quite exciting. But, you know, looking forward, and more importantly, when we look at what's happening to the world, we're facing enormous challenges. Frankly, many of them are existential, whether you're looking at political crises, you know, and what's going to happen to artificial intelligence in the future and climate change. I believe we're going to have to find a way to tech our way out of many of these existential crises. Artificial intelligence, Pattern Computer, and its explainable AI. You know, these are technologies that are potentially will give us the type of muscular tools we need potentially to save us all. So I'm very excited about that movement and where it's headed. And I want to know more, and I'm excited to follow it. Then as far as future conferences, can I suggest another section on current genomics, especially relative to life improvement and life extension? these technologies are rapidly changing and have the potential to forever, change our lifespans and even what it means to be human. And thus, I think they're worthy to consider and discuss.
Thank
My
you.
thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I completely agree. I think, I don't know how many of you were in the pattern session, but the idea of explainable AI is radical and it is extremely innovative. And the fact that that came from a FIRE conversation, right? It came from a challenge that we proposed to our group of CTOs, what we call the CTO challenge, which we've done many years. And then evolved, literally the people who were on stage doing that challenge, many of them quit their jobs or were recruited into this company. And now here we are 4 years later, and they have revolutionized the future of artificial intelligence. And that is extremely remarkable. So I don't think, thanks to the hard work of the Pattern team and Mark for leading that. But that is really a huge accomplishment, not just of Pattern Computer, but of the power of FIRE to spur new ideas and bring new things into the world. So a huge kudos to the whole Pattern team for that.
Thanks, Brett.
All right, Oliver.
All right, I finally learned how to use the unmute button. So first, a fairly trivial shout out for this meeting. I agree with Mark Prensky enormously that the Zoom thing has been tremendously, a tremendous enhancement in some ways. I love that we're looking at each other. I'm not looking at the back of somebody's head, while we're looking at the sage on the stage. I really like that we have this more face-to-face type of thing. But what I really want to say is something based on some close to 50 years of knowing Mark, who I was friends with and eventually housemates with as marine biology students together at Stanford's Marine Biology Station in Pacific Grove. I don't know anyone who has been as consistently innovated and effectively humanistic. At Stanford, when the student strikes were going on in protest against the invasion of Cambodia, Mark was one of the, if not the, pioneering organizer. Instead of throwing rocks and staging riots, he organized a candlelight march through the campus, which was covered on national news. It set an enormous, powerful precedent. That spring, he organized a bus to take a bunch of us down to paint an orphanage in Mexico. We hooked up again in graduate school in Seattle, where he he had way more on his mind than I did, and I found graduate school to be very fulfilling and challenging. Mark was like, "I got better things to do," and he went and founded the Whale Museum, which is still in operation in Friday Harbor. The Orca Alliance. One could go on and on for almost 50 years worth of observations of someone who is making a difference in so many dimensions. It boggles my mind. So a shout out to Mark personally, a shout out to Mark and Mary Jane for the job they've done with their the two members that they've contributed to the next generation, who I am blown away by the people that Barrett and Evan have become and contributing the way that they are. So I've taken up enough airtime. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Oliver. That's very sweet.
Thank you.
And I actually didn't know those two stories about Mark, so now I have more things to. It's fun to hear, different perspectives, because he doesn't always tell me about the things that he did when he was younger.
All great Mark stories.
Yeah, I'm getting there some comments about increased diversity at Fire, which is definitely a priority for us on all fronts. We've talked about all kinds of diversity. And that is something that we will be thinking about and taking seriously going into our next round of planning. We talked about the importance of having a diversity of different viewpoints and perspectives, and how our solutions and our ability to implement those solutions are made better by that characteristic. And I think that it's very true, and it's something that we need to do better on. So thank you for bringing that up, and we welcome your feedback and suggestions on that front.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, Barrett. We've been working on that, and it is also hard, and it's like part of the natural aspect of a community is that the people in the community have their own networks, and they introduce you to them, and you introduce them to your people. And so if we become sort of like in our own little bubble, then that affects that process. So it's hard to get more diversity if you are not starting as a diverse group, which, as we know, we're not. And so we've been working hard on that, and we need your help. We want your help to do the same thing. So, introduce us to folks that, are from a more diverse background of any kind, that are company leaders, that are doing, that are fire people. We want them.
All right. I'm not seeing any other hands up. So please put your hand up if you want to say something. Got about 20 minutes left.
Did you see Mark's question about will we continue with firesides? Or did we answer that?
We did not answer that. I think the plan is yes. Yeah, I mean, we've really enjoyed. We're talking about. So maybe this would be a good time to talk about what we mentioned at the happy hour last night for people who were not there. So one of the things that we have tried to experiment with this year is how do we continue the work that Fire does in person and distribute that work more broadly throughout the year? How do we create ecosystems, smaller ecosystems within our ecosystem that are working together on specific problems? And so this past year, we've partnered with Enersys and Alexis to help reinvent the grid, the US grid. We've put together a series of about 8 roundtables, I think, focused on of leaders from across the clean energy space who are trying to move the United States to 100% renewable grid. And each conversation was focused around a different part of the grid. We were trying to really bring together a lot of expertise to help us understand in a short period of time, what do we need to know? What is it going to take to get us from where we are now to the electrification of everything powered by 100% renewable grid? And so we put that all together into essentially like a how-to guide that covers policy at a state, local, federal level to make that transition, changes needed, technology changes needed, supply chain changes needed, security changes needed, and we will be releasing that in the coming weeks. There was also a question from someone about how do we actually make these, from Chris, I believe it was, but how do we actually make the things that we're talking about, make sure that they are actually applied in policy? What can we do to move some of the ideas that we're talking about around sustainability in the future forward within policy at all levels? And so that's something, that specific project is something that we plan to replicate going forward, focus on other problems. So if you have thoughts about, hey, this is the biggest problem that Fire should tackle this year, please send them to us. I think we're going to try to do probably 3 of those this year, or 4. And so we welcome your ideas. We also may be reaching out to you to participate in those if it's an area of your expertise, or to suggest people for those if it's an area of your expertise. So please just feel free to email me about that at any time. My email is Barrett, BERIT @stratnews.com. And then,
underline the fact that this is a different program. Roundtables are a different type of program than firesides. They're
yes,
fireside events. So people are used to seeing firesides who may not have ever been to a roundtable. What Barrett's describing here is something new that she's done, and that we want to do more of. So in addition to the firesides, which are our monthly online event for everybody who's a member, we've been holding these roundtable discussions, which end up with a final report and are focused on policy change. And what she's describing is our desire to do more of these.
Good clarification. So yeah, so we'll be doing more of both this coming year. If you have, I've already had a bunch of suggestions throughout this week for great fireside topics. Caitlin Cameron, I know, was wanting to do something on human brain or brain to computer interfaces, which I think would be really interesting. But if you have thoughts or suggestions, or you want to partner on one of those, please let me know. We will definitely be doing more of them in the coming year.
Actually, just to add to that too, in case people are wondering, like some of the other things that we're pondering, we've been talking to some folks about doing something around microgridding, which is sort of an extension out from the work that Barrett's done with the existing roundtables on going to zero on the grid. So there could be kind of like a more specific project there. We've got someone who wants to do on clean ocean stuff. So Steve Sherman was really excited about doing something similar that would relate to, and part of this,
yeah, go ahead.
Part of this may include creating, you know, a consortium in each kind of zone. So it's like, if you imagine what we've done with Invent IP, where we created this consortium, created these policy suggestions, you know, built this network there, and then tried to push for change in the right direction. We're picturing doing that same thing on a number of different fronts, and we've got a lot of interest from a couple different places. So suggestions are welcome.
It's unusual for the fire troop tribe to be so quiet.
I know.
I don't think they'll be happening face to face. I think they'd all be jumping up for the microphone.
Well, they're chatting a lot in the chat.
So the one question that maybe on everybody's mind or nobody's mind, but we haven't yet determined yet when the next fire is, because of still the uncertainties ahead. But that is a discussion we'll hope to have soon.
So let me add to that, Scott, and say that we have someone, Meg Felso, who's helped a lot with fire and who's working on scouting out dates. We don't know yet what the world will be like. And I know we're in the predictions business. A little tough when you're dealing with a weaponized virus, but I will say that the worry I've got is that in making that prediction, you don't know whether we have new major variants being dropped into the population, or whether they really are evolving, as Larry Brilliant said, in reserve pools somewhere. So that's an important question. But therefore, it's hard to know what will happen a month from now. Will there be a BA3 or BA4 and all that kind of stuff? What we're trying to do is find a date in the coming year. We know we'll have fire, know that. And we'll talk about what you have said here today about virtual versus face-to-face. And then the financial problem for us is when you put down 100 or 150 grand on a hotel a year ahead of time, and then the next variant shows up, they're probably not going to give you your money back. We went through a near scrape on that coming into COVID, and we had a big fight. And luckily we had help from the largest booking agency in the country, which helped us get the money back. So hotels aren't very nice about this. I don't blame them, I guess, but they aren't. So we have to take that into account as we decide whether the next one should be face-to-face or should be virtual or a hybrid meeting.
Okay.
And all your comments are welcome.
Yeah. Ty Carlson.
I think the discussion with Paul Wolfowitz was particularly interesting. And I really enjoyed the scope of that type of discussion. And I'd love to encourage more of that class of individual that has a little bit of the history of, and was there. I was in the room when decisions were made, to make commentary regarding current actions and policy, because I think they give us a new dimension of insight that we risk an echo chamber effect. And so I love bringing even ones that may not be well aligned with in general strategy. I thought it was a very respectful conversation, and I know how challenging that might have been for certain moderators. But I saw a lot of respectful dialogue there that I really enjoyed. I think you were able to bring out some new dimensions into the consideration of factors that we're not normally exposed to. So I thought that was really, really, really good. I enjoyed that tremendously. I also enjoyed the simplicity discussion earlier this morning. I do think that it's a different dimension, and I enjoy people going into different dimensions of discussions. Where is engineering really? Are we just adding too much complexity when we really need to think the other way? And how would we incent that type of behavior? That forces me to really sit and I'm going to kick that around for quite a while. And so the best thing about fire is it gives me these things to kick around and wonder about. And then it has to do with the other contributors at fire that I learn from. So while I enjoy and I appreciate the comment of the Zoom effect, I would encourage us getting back together as people, when we can, because I get so much more out of informally meeting people. And I know, the technology had limitations, and yes, we had one-on-ones, but there is something about that informal walking up to someone that you just can't replace. And being thrown into a room of 4 people is not something that doesn't work for me. That's just not my style. But I respect the efforts that you made to make it as collaborative as possible. And I enjoy collaborative models, but I do like to tend to choose who I'm in conversation with, because I have a specific question I want to ask, and I really want to go deep on a few issues. And a one-on-one is a little bit too formal of an approach, because I can get away with not having my thoughts together when I walk up to someone, but having a one-on-one someone, I actually have to have an agenda and a meeting, and it's just different. So excellent fire. I thought it was well done, especially considering the challenges that were being faced and how many challenges you took on and did exceptionally well on. So kudos to you on that. I also think you stepped it up with regard to the level of speakers and the breadth of speakers. I think you broadened the scope and broadened the camera angle on this, and I appreciate that. I would encourage us, and Mark, I go again and again on this, and I have not made headway, but I'll continue. I do think we need to talk about agriculture. I think we talk about the environment, we talk everything, but we don't talk about, the process of creating food and how we're creating food and what is a better way to create food, because we're doing incredible damage to the planet. Phosphorus only has a limited runway. What is it that we can do that allows us to continue? So I'd like to venture into that realm.
Maybe you can point Barrett and Evan and I to places to go there.
Yeah, as I look out over the fields.
You could start with your wife.
and the other thing I would mention is the pattern computer stuff, and this one is self-serving, but I do think that the XAI, the explainable AI, is a fundamental ground shift. And for those who watch this space and those who play in this space, having somebody to unwind that thread and to see underneath these things, I think is going to be exceptionally powerful. And as we play this out over the next few years, I think this will be a place where the sea change started. So thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, Ty. My joke about Mark's wife was that for anyone who doesn't know, our mom is a sheep and blueberry farmer. So in addition to many other things. All right, Ricky. Ricky Solomon, your turn. And
Ricky, you're muted.
Oh, yeah, I'm unmuted now. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed the conference. As I said, the best virtual fire ever. I just want to give a plug for the fire starters as a enthusiast for young tech companies. I thought we had some great young companies here this year, both fire starters and also I was really intrigued by Eduardo in the synthetic bio area. So I'm going to be following up with some of them, but I always really enjoyed that program. So thank you for all the work on that.
Thank you, Ricky. I realized that I have neglected to mention two groups of people that really help us to put fire on, and thanking them, which is, one of them is our advisory board. We have a couple advisory board members here now, and we meet twice a year, basically. in the lead up to fire to help plan, and they help us recruit speakers. And a lot of our most interesting kind of innovative panels and companies come from people, their networks, right? So I think that is we appreciate your efforts, we appreciate your perspective and your guidance in helping us bring together the best group of technologists that we can. The second is our moderators. So some of those, there is some overlap between some of our advisory board members were moderators for this year, including Amory and Esther Dyson and Cynthia. But we have, many more who were not and who do a fantastic job doing these virtual interviews and do a lot of research to prepare for those. So thank you to all of our moderators, and thank you for your time and energy in bringing these really amazing conversations together. They would not be as interesting as they are without the caliber of the moderators that we work with. So thank you for all of that.
And John Wells, did you mention John Wells?
John Wells, especially, yeah.
And David Duncan.
Mr. Brin.
And David Duncan and
Mr. Brin.
David Brin. I'm just trying to see who's here.
Ed Butler.
Ed Butler.
Ed Butler.
Yeah.
And thank you to the BBC in general for making it again.
Ed Butler, Ed Butler, you brought it. It's a great cast of moderators. Really, I think this is probably of the fires we've had. I think you had the best cast of moderators this year, and that's saying a lot. So kudos.
Yeah, Jody Westby.
Jody, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, she was killer. I love. Yeah.
That was very good.
And we would also be remiss, Evan, if we didn't mention Alex Merle, who really worked his butt off to get us Ukrainian and a killer lineup of Ukrainian speakers who had to cancel. And then once that happened at the very last moment, a killer lineup of speakers on Ukraine to replace them. So thank you to Alex. And it made a very personally challenging time for himself and his family.
And they're at the fact that Alex has helped us for years.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had Ukraine on the stage now for years saying, get ready, we know what's coming and it's going to happen to you guys next, kind of a thing. And so we know the Ukraine people well, we know their government well, and we know their problems well, and it's because of Alex's help.
We had another comment in the chat from Mark Sachs, who said our focus on China and now Russia has diverted attention away from Africa and South America, etc. Mark, I totally agree. And I look forward to doing more on that in the coming year. I think, we have been felt for many years that our job, part of our job was to say, hey, this is really bad thing is coming. This really bad thing is coming. And no one was paying attention. And so now we're at a point where the world is finally starting to wake up. And I think it is a very good time for us to broaden our horizons to the global picture, to include that more in a part of how we think about it.
Yeah, you don't want to lose sight of China. Clearly, you've done a lot there, but I think south of us, Central South America plus the Africas needs some more attention. There's a lot of problems there that will impact the planet that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, Marcus and I were just talking in the chat because he was bringing up Egypt, which I hadn't realized that the food crisis, unsurprisingly, it makes sense, is getting a lot worse there right now. But it was reminding me that, so I'm actually part of a group that's called the Red Line, and I wanted to get, I don't know if George Lemur was here earlier, but I wanted to get him in there to see fire, because they do a lot of like geopolitical stuff, and they know some really great speakers on these places that I just don't have networks. And one of the things that they did was a really good like audio chat on the situation in Ethiopia, Eritrea, and that dam freshwater crisis and the dam crisis. I mean, this is like a part of the world where there's like 400 million people and not that big of an area, and they're all relying on the same riverine ecosystem. So that was fascinating to me. It's definitely like not a, I've got nothing. I don't know anything about that. So we can try and dig up some really good experts from some other areas too.
And they're just filling up that dam, and they're just, it's like, they're just saying, screw you downstream. And that is going to have humanitarian effects and political effects. I mean, that's going to be huge.
People who saw Eritrea side with Russia were shocked on the Ukraine issue. And I think with regard to what Marcus is suggesting, and I hate to say this, it's not a very, very happy thing, but for those who remember the Cold War, we now have China going after South America, and we have Russia going after Africa, which China's already done. And we're wondering what to do next. And so others that we don't like very much are being very active and aggressive in getting their influence out into the world. And we've been kind of asleep. And I think that we need to not be internal. We need to look out into the world again.
Speaking of being asleep, I would also be remiss if I didn't mention Ken Kreutz Delgado and Ben Brown, who did a lot of work to pull together AI Day and all of our incredible speakers on AI, including some who were not on AI Day, like Angela Sheffield. So their work and efforts brought those people into the fire community as well.
That was great.
He has his hand up.
Oh, Mark.
People with their hand up.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if that was a repeat or.
No, I just have one more small point, but I would like to say it. I see two classes of things that we're talking about, and both are exciting. One is incremental, like XAI, that we've been waiting for forever, and you guys did it, and I thought that was fabulous. The other is a paradigm shift, like resonance theory, which says, you guys always thought space was empty, and now it's not empty. And I would love to see more paradigm shifts included in the mix if it's possible.
Hey, buddy, XAI is not incremental. It is a huge revolution.
Yeah,
no, but we've all been looking for it. We've all been looking for it and hoping it would come for. I don't want to denigrate it.
Yeah, we've been talking about it.
We've been talking about it and looking for it and trying to get it for a long time, and you guys did it, and that's fabulous.
Yeah.
But we've thought about it before, as opposed to thinking for the first time that, wait, what if all this empty space is not empty? That's really different in my view.
Pretty cool.
Thank you for both.
I second that one. It made my brain hurt.
Well, she has a pretty big brain, so that's a compliment.
Yeah. Ricky, is your hand still up, or was that left over? All right, I'm going to go to Simon and Mary next.
Simon and Mary.
If there's someone else, if anyone else wants to say something, please put your hand up so I can call on you, because otherwise that's the only way I have of knowing that you would like to talk.
I was just waiting till Simon finished coughing so that I wouldn't share that with you. It occurred to me that at the end of every fire, we always have this enthusiasm of ideas and potential contacts. And I know I'm guilty of not always remembering to come back to you 3 months later and say, hey, I promised you this contact, and here it is. And I'm wondering if it might be a good idea to be thinking now about telling us when to come and talk to you about contacts and ideas. Maybe, put a pin in our schedule to remind us all of these ideas we have now that we want to follow up on. When's a good time to actually come back to you? Because you're going to be pretty busy the next few days decompressing and putting the videos up and doing all of those things. If we flood you with everything right now, maybe you'd rather we waited.
You can use Fire HQ for that purpose.
Actually, yeah, that would be a great way to do it. Anytime you
That
can
way everybody can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the first time. For the first time after fire, we have our own platform, our own network, social network.
Do a total brain dump there if you'd like to share that with us. That would be great.
Go to Fire HQ, please do.
And that way everyone can see it, and they can use it to, jog their memory, or maybe it'll inspire other ideas in their mind about who they want to bring or who they want to invite. So yeah, that'd be a great way to do it. Oliver Dominic, you've got your hand up again. Is that on purpose?
Yeah, they're unmuted again. So thinking about expanding the sort of increasing the dimensional richness of fire, which is almost hard to imagine because it's already so rich. But it occurred to me earlier in the week when we were in the session about healthcare, AI healthcare, and that whole dynamic. And it occurred to me that it seems like it's really important to start including people who are in, psychology and other really humanistic, people-oriented, more toward the how people interact with this stuff, because it's clear to me that in the healthcare example, there's a lot of friction in people being able to use what AI and automation, internet-based interfacing. It is a mess for the average person who's a consumer, and that includes the patient population as well as a lot of the professionals. And I think the technology side of it, which is where we are primarily focused in this community, can only do so much. You know, we can perfect all the technology, but it's not going to work well if people don't adopt it, embrace it, and essentially find it to be fulfilling. It needs to be part of the therapeutic process, not a barrier to it. And I think we could make a lot of mileage in that direction by bringing in people whose expertise is in the human factors side.
I agree, Oliver. I think I mean, that was part of the idea behind bringing in Leidy Klotz this morning.
Yes, absolutely. Well done.
And Heidi, but more of that I think is good for us. Just as we talked about having other, different perspectives makes our ideas better. Right. Having that human perspective in the majority of our conversations, I think would be a smart thing to do.
I want to tell Oliver a story.
Okay.
Go.
So Oliver, you're going to love this, I think. At Pattern, we're working on cancer a lot and genetics. And so I got myself involved in some of the planning, and it went like this. We hired a very expensive, smart consultant to help me learn. And so I was talking to her, we're deep in this conversation, and I'm getting more and more frustrated from the science side. And finally I said, look, we want to save lives. And she just goes quiet. She said, what? I said, how is this going to save more lives? And she goes, oh, I thought you wanted to make money. And in the world of big pharma, as you know, you got to decide which team you're playing for here. And the idea of that we wanted to actually go out there and save lives was a huge shock to her. She thought we were trying to make money, and she was all set to help us get rich. And the track for us was not obvious once you realized that there was a fork in the road. And so we've spent a year trying to learn all about the problem of that fork and how do we do both? How do we make money for our shareholders and do good? Because that was not obvious to her at all. It sounded like it was the first time anybody had ever had that conversation with her. So, it's not just a human factors problem. It's a problem that's very, very deep in the medical system that is not entirely obvious to the players.
Mark, it reminds me a lot of when you and I went to DC and we had a meeting with one of our DC friends, and we're, saying, okay, so we've got this book, Theft Nation, that we've just created, and we're kind of just doing our thing. Like, here's the idea, here's why it's important, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, yeah, but what do you want? And we go, well, we want to meet all these, people in the government so that they understand the problem and do something.
You're breaking the story that there's a nation trying to take us down, and it's working.
Yeah, there's an economic war going on. We want them to know that and do something about it. And he goes, no, but what do you want? And he just kept saying that over and over again. And at the end of it, 25 minutes into this meeting, I said, do you mean do we want money or something? And he goes, yeah. And we go, no, we want you to do something about it. It was just like the exact same feeling. But what do you actually want?
We learned a lot.
All right, Rennie.
Hey, one of the things that first off, thank you.
Oh, sure.
First fire. So I'm still applying aloe to the burns. It felt like there were between, I'm just looking at my notes, between John Hagel's conversation about kind of opportunity narratives or Heidi Larson's conversation around the around vaccines and talking about the need for hopeful narratives. There was a lot of conversation about there's all these important things, but people don't understand them. How do we involve them in the story of these things? Like what's the story that's going to get people inspired by that? And I'm reminded, I was working, mea culpa. I worked in advertising for a while, and we always had clients who would be like, people just don't know how good our product is. They're dumb. And it was like, not a great strategy. So that's, I think and the other piece when we talked about the electric cars and how we just need people to understand. It's like one of our challenges in an incredibly complicated and information rich time is that nobody's sitting around waiting to hear another thing they need to worry about, or another thing they need to be educated about, and so that's the thought that's just rolling around in the back of my head. It felt like there were a lot of panels that ended with "if we had a better story," and just that's just what's been rattling around is how we get to
very cool if somebody wanted to make a movie about the fire story. And if people could get excited about thinking this way and taking action as a hopeful thing, as a fun thing, as a way to make friends, as a way of feeling good at the end of the day instead of bad. And we haven't ever tried to do that, but I think making this contagious so that
we did do it, Mark. We did do it, Mark.
Did we?
Pattern.
Oh yeah, we did that.
Well, that's where it came from, right? So you get to put, you do get to put a chit in that Trivial Pursuit thing.
All right. Okay. Well, I think that, having people know more about fire itself and come to fire more and more and have divisions and different groups and roundtables and make it contagious. Movies are pretty good at that. So, or whatever, however, that was actually a TV show that David Brin started originally. So that, the CTO challenge was. So I think we should think about how to do that maybe, but certainly you're right. And we have all these stories that have come out of fire over the last 20 years. It's pretty exciting, really. I mean, I think the whole fire story is quite beautiful.
Rennie, I think I should probably warn you that it's unfortunate that you've identified yourself as having some kind of experience with and talent with advertising, because the fire community I won't say the community, we at Fire have traditionally been really terrible at that. That's our worst aspect. Our biggest weakness is marketing. Like, we don't know how to market our own product, and we clearly do a terrible job at it. So now that we know that you have skills in that, we will definitely be reaching out to you for your help.
We're always trying to find someone who can help us actually get our message out there in a way that works.
For 18 years, we've been trying.
All the volunteers take one step forward.
People always say, they're like, can I just invite someone to fire? Because I can't really explain it. I just have to bring them, and then they'll get it, and then they'll really like it, and that'll be fine. And we've been dealing with that problem for 2 decades. So,
well, we've hit 108.
Yeah, I think we should probably wrap up.
May I make one final comment?
Yeah,
please. One is I would like to reiterate the exhortation of Junaid this morning in the Ukrainian panel to back up, given all this talk about potential cyber attack and grid problems. Back your stuff up.
Yeah.
I thought that was one of the simplest, wisest comments of the week. And then another thing is that Fire HQ, just note that there is no www. It's just Fire-HQ. You'll get the link somewhere else, but if you just want to go wandering and look for it, it's Fire-HQ. That's it.
.com.
Oh, yeah, .com.
I will also add, even if you have an online backup of your stuff, you should also have an offline backup, which is a lesson that I personally learned the hard way in my first company.
From our lovely friends in Moscow.
Probably.
There was a great case a few years ago of a journalist named Matt Horan who fell afoul of a hacker who wanted his Twitter ID of all things, leveraged Amazon and Apple's password recovery systems against each other, took over his account, and in the process, just for the fun of it, also deleted his entire Apple iCloud or whatever it's called. Your online backup that's continually syncing is not actually a backup. It's just your data.
That's Wendy, that's exactly what happened to me, actually. Exactly that. They deleted our backup, they deleted our data, and it was not actually a backup because it was gone and our password was changed. We couldn't access our account. So definitely double offline, protect yourself.
But
and with that,
If you use cloud storage, go in and check, because most of the cloud storage systems have now introduced ransomware protection exactly for when somebody goes in and mass deletes or mass encrypts things. And if you get caught, go and see, because there's often a timeline where you can roll back to when it was good before they got at it. So if you get caught and you don't have an offline backup yet, you may not be lost these days.
Expert.
Sierra Salter, I'm going to end with this comment from Sierra, who we haven't gotten to hear from as much as I would like to, because I love all of her comments in the chat, but she said fire, a professional Burning Man, ?
Now we have to all get naked and do drugs.
I don't think attending fire is ever going to be as painful and logistically difficult as attending Burning Man.
Wendy, you never had to go up the mountain and take oxygen with you.
No, I get one of my friends to give me a rundown every year. It sounds like very hard work.
I just said sadly with less art, but not happily with less sand.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We could not do what we do without you, and we really appreciate every single one of you for coming and sharing your ideas and perspectives and thoughts. We hope that you leave this week with many more friends and connections than you came into it with. And we look forward to staying connected to all of you for a very long time. So you will be hearing from us very shortly, but first we're going to take a nap.
Thank you, Barrett. Thank you, Evan. Thank you, Fire Team. And thank you, all of you with us. It's been a great week.
Thank you, Mark.
Congratulations, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Good fire.
Thank you, Simon and Mary.
Cheers, Wendy.
Bye, Simon and Mary.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. See you soon when we can.
Yeah.